This is Don't Get Me Started. This is a conversation about advertising. And here is your host, freelance creative director and creative circus department head, Dan Balser.
Yeah, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. What a year we've had. Thank you so much for sitting on the other side of these conversations. And I'm hoping really soon that I'll be able to sit in the same room with my guest. This conversation comes, this is Lauren Goldsmith. She's Associate Creative Director at Thrasio. We're going to talk about Thrasio here in a little bit, but before that, I just want to say how do I get these guests? So this guest came to me. Of course, I've known Lauren for a long time. I loved Lauren as a student. I've kind of been following her career from afar, but she contacted me looking for students because she works at this place called Thrasio that you've never heard of. And I was so impressed by, let's just say this, her level of enthusiasm and joy coming out of her voice was so fulfilling and inspiring to me that I just wanted to talk on the podcast and record a conversation for you, the listeners, to hear Lauren's story. So this is a very interesting background. She went to Tulane, then she went and got a master's in advertising at Boston University, and then came to the creative circus a little while after that. She'd already worked at J. Walter Thompson, iHeartMedia. She came back to school. She worked at Point Smith in Houston and Unleaded in Houston before landing at Thrasio, where she is now. I'm going to let her tell you what Thrasio is and what they do. I'm super excited to have this conversation. Listeners, if you hear some weird noise in the background, we're still recording this over the internet because we're still in a pandemic. But Lauren, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk to us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Dan. I'm super excited to be on your podcast. I've been listening for a while and very honored. So Thrasio is a very interesting company. I took a huge leap when I decided to take this position, as any kind of like startup entrepreneurial position is. It's like it could go great, it could tank. And actually, when I was faced with this position, I was also fielding a position at Chevron that was about $20,000 more, and it would have been really in-house, like not in-house like the way I am now. It would have been like doing safety videos for for the company, very corporate, very stuffy. And I just kind of looked at it, instead of looking at the bottom line, I looked at like quality of life and opportunity going forward, and decided to roll my dice, which I'm really glad I did. Thrasio is it's a company that acquires third-party Amazon sellers. So they find products that are, have a certain number of reviews, certain high level of rating. They want to find rock star products, and then basically they offer to buy out these sellers. They're usually kind of mom and pop, and they have these great stories, but they can only take their business so far, and we buy them out, and they also get, I think, there's certain, I'm not sure exactly how it works, but there's a certain level of incentive as the brand moves forward through Thrasio. And as a creative, we take those brands and we evaluate them for what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, what they could be doing better against competitors, all the normal things that we think about when we're doing creative, in the regular advertising world. We're just focusing on e-commerce. And so then it depends on what the brand needs. Does it need a brand overhaul? Does it need new creative, new photography, new packaging? Or some of the brands we acquire are really good as is, and they just need kind of maintenance. That's the base level of what our business is doing, but we're also expanding into international markets. We're D2C retail, including like Walmart, Target, Home Depot, stuff like that. We have over 100 brands at this point, and we're just growing so rapidly. One reason we're able to do what we do is because we are a one-stop shop. And I know that's like very cliche to say, but like we have supply chain, we have mergers and acquisition, we have legal, we have brand management, we have product launch, we have all these different groups. That's why we're growing so rapidly, that everything is kept, within our walls, so to speak. And we're able to, we have all these different seller vendors, and like if something's happening with a stock out or a shortage, we can reroute that. So yeah, it's just kind of this crazy unicorn, as it's being called. Um,
That's cool. Doing the podcast this way has forced me to shut up and let people talk.
sorry.
No, 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 no. Me to shut up, not you. So I'm actually made notes while you were talking. I made notes while you were talking, which I've been so bad at for the last 14 years of interrupting people. So I have 4 questions based on just what you just said.
Okay.
So first off, I love that this isn't a question, it's a comment. I love that you use the first person plural we. Like, I don't know that I've ever remember you or anyone graduating and saying like, well, we do this, we do that. It's like, it feels to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you kind of feel like you're part of I don't want to say family, but like you're an integral part of this company's sort of
Oh,
process. Right?
100%. It is a we. We are a family. If you look at our website, one of the things it talks about in our culture is we heckle like family. We have it says no jerks rule, but really it's no assholes. And like we always assume positive intent. We encourage failing forward. Um, it is totally a family, and it's totally a team effort. You know, we all have stock options in the company. We all feel that we have ownership in the company and how the company does. Um, and
Which is amazing, right? Like, so that's very fulfilling.
it's very fulfilling, but also it's just we all drink the Kool-Aid. I don't know any other way to say it is like everyone's a cheerleader. You could be on any call and oh, we're showing like how this particular department did this week, and then you see people's names mentioned, and in the chat on the side of the Zoom, it's like Hannah, go Lacey, go Evan. You know, like it's like everyone's like such a huge cheerleader, and it's almost cheesy, but I still really love it. It's you just get these like great these great vibes.
That's fun. So talk about what the creatives get to do, what the job looks like. So I know that you kind of reached out to the school looking for young talent. So what does it look like if I come in as an art director or a copywriter, and what is your job? Because when you started talking about it, you were talking a lot about business stuff, which I also wanted to ask you about your business degree and whether you kind of lean into some of that background. But let's start talking a little bit about like what does a creative do in an environment like this? I just had a conversation with a student this morning about her career, saying that like she needs to be in a place where she gets to write in things other than just traditional advertising medium, even if it's like digital traditional, it's still traditional. She wants the opportunity to be able to do a wider range of thinking. So tell me, if you can, like what writers and art directors do in this environment.
So we have like as we grow, we have all these different pods, and there's a senior art director that oversees pretty much the graphic designers, all different levels, and copywriters are all different levels. The copywriters technically report to our ACD of copy, Forrest Lee, who's wonderful, but the art director is still kind of responsible for running that pod. And they're doing everything that you would imagine. We get, a new account or brand is acquired. We work with the brand managers. We have those brand strategy meetings. Then we have a creative strategy meeting where we have evaluated and we make kind of our recommendations based on time, money, and and actually tier level, which is like how does that product what's the potential for earnings compared to the rest of our portfolio. um, and then we make recommendations on that in how we're going to move forward, and where we see the brand going. And then after that, it's a little bit more of an in or within the creative department, we'll make our pitches to our creative director, or to me as an ACD or others. And we'll refine them, and then we'll work. We have a whole content production team: photographers, videographers, video animators, all of that. We have an entire packaging team. So
Wow.
every brand is different in terms of what it needs.
So who are the clients at the brands? Is the client internal, or is the client the original person who created the brand? How does
We
that work? Who does ultimate approval on the clients, or who's the client?
sort of our brand managers. I mean, we acquire these brands, we own them.
Right. Okay.
So our brand managers kind of act like account executives would at a traditional agency, right? And we and they're the ones that have to kind of give final sign off, but there is always that like brand creative struggle where we're like, well, we have the expertise, you should do this.
Right. Right. Right.
Which I mean happens in every agency, right?
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. But let me ask you this. So, like, I've heard both sides of this. I've heard that working for a company means that working I'm treating this conversation as if you're technically sort of like in-house. So you're doing the creative for the people that you work with instead of having to go pitch it to a client. So
Sure.
I've heard both sides. I've heard one side is that the upside to working in-house is that the chain of command is so short that you can get stuff made. Like you come up with an idea in the morning, you can get it made that day. I've also heard the other side that that never happens because everything is sort of more regimented. So how has the experience been for you with like the approval process of work on different accounts?
Well, to start, um, as we grow and grow and grow, the chain is lengthening.
Yep.
It just has to, and I think there's like someone said best practices is you shouldn't have more than like 8 people, 8 direct reports underneath you. So they're trying to keep it that way, in terms of how they structure it, which can be confusing. But so no, I mean, of course, there is the possibility that you could have an idea and get it done that day, but it's not that kind of in-house agency. This creative team is almost at 100 people, and it's larger than what I worked with at JWT
Yeah. Wow.
in Atlanta. And so there is still the pitches, there's still the sign-offs, there's still getting the creative director. And one thing we do that it's kind of fun. It's really fun because people say the darndest things. But we do pick food testing, and we do testing against like actual Amazon buyers. And so we have this idea, we want to see, is it going to test well? And or is it going to succeed? Because we care about two things, right? We care about succession rate, which is if you search for something on Amazon and you have 20 different things to choose from, which one are you going to choose and why? And that has to do with your main listing photo and how you angle it, or does it include the box, or like, or all of those. There's a lot of things that go into it. And then the next half of that is conversion rate. So they've landed on your listing page, what did you tell them? How did you compel them to actually make that purchase? And I mean, it's very similar to a lot of advertising, right?
Yeah. Do
So
you like being able to get that data back on the creative or no?
I do. I mean, sometimes we get frustrated. We'll make jokes and we're like, "Oh, the Karens are out today," or
Exactly.
whatever. That kind of thing. Because we've literally had people look at our stuff and be like, "I choose A because I like the dog in the picture." And I'm just like,
Yeah,
"Okay,
right. That's right. That's right. Right. We did all this work to make this other shot perfect. And like, I like the dog.
yeah." Or the woman in that fitness shot is hot, like and it's that kind of silly stuff that especially because we spend a lot of time trying to craft even the right question to get the right answers, right?
Right.
To say like, this is what I'm asking you to pay attention to the design here, not or I'm asking you to anyway. We try to craft these questions, but it's very clear that a lot of the people just kind of don't really read, and oh, I
Absolutely.
like that better.
So is
And
so wait, hold on. So is the stuff tested in real world or is it tested in a testing environment? In other words, are you putting out listings on Amazon to see how and then tweaking different versions of it? Or is it that you do sort of focus group or focus point sort of surveys?
actually both. So PickFu is a company that I guess they get people, and they can channel. Oh, you want Amazon buyers? You want people that are familiar with searching on Amazon. That's what we use first and foremost. If we're really on the fence, there's this feature Amazon has called splitly testing, or A/B testing, and what they can do is they can run one batch of creative versus the second, and it's completely random. So let's say I did it for a week, and some people, when they go to that page, they get the first set. Some people, they get
Right.
the second. And then, so that's actually real time. And you're getting those, what real people think. So that are
Right.
looking for that project or that product. That's the difference between Splitly and PickFu. Is like PickFu, they're not necessarily looking for that product. Whereas the A/B Splitly testing, you already know they're looking for it.
Right.
That's a huge difference.
You're smart. So I just want to say, I want to say this to the listeners. I don't spend a lot of time on this podcast. It's never been about the industry per se or companies per se, but I just want to get into this with you a little bit, Lauren, because I wanted students or young creators to realize that there are very fulfilling paths in their careers that aren't going to brand name agency in big city. There are very fulfilling, rewarding opportunities in places that are like behind the wall that you're looking at, like places you never would have considered. Um, can we circle back to your career for a second?
Sure.
So I mentioned earlier that you had actually, you got out of undergrad, you got a master's degree and worked for a little while. Let's talk a little bit about how at that moment you were defining success, which pushed you to go to the circus, and how you define success now. What was it that kind of forced you at that time to go back to another school, to go to a portfolio school? Like what was the impetus for that?
Sure. I kind of got into this career at a time where a lot of things I don't feel like were very there wasn't a clear path to what people were doing. Even in high school, I had gotten into photography and I plastered my walls with different ads. I had a got milk ad door. I had a absolute ad door, and I was like fascinated with this stuff. But every time I told my parents I wanted to go into advertising, they would correct me and say, "No, you want to go into marketing." And so I was very much being pushed into this business school environment.
Yeah.
And I didn't know the difference, and I didn't have anyone to really guide me. Um, it wasn't until my senior year, or around before my senior year of college at Tulane, I took this class called Rules of Persuasion with a communications professor, and we learned about the six rules of persuasion and all about that. And I thought it was fascinating, and I remember going to ask him, you know, where do you like what do you think I should do next? My mom was pushing me to go get a master's, and and he was kind of telling me like maybe I should look into portfolio school, and I did look into it. I got all of your swag like that year, and that was back in 2004. And but I was terrified because I didn't feel like I had a portfolio to apply. It said you needed a portfolio to get in. I did not realize that meant, oh, I could show you my pictures or some of my writing. Like I thought I needed a book to even get there.
Right.
And so I shied away, right? And I actually got into UT Austin. I got into BU and Tufts, I think, in Northwestern. And I ended up going, my mom really pushed me to go to BU because honestly, I think she was just like, well, Boston, New York, good for advertising, lots of people there, like she just thought that was the best place. And I'm a dummy and I listened. So,
Well, are you a dummy? Was it valuable?
no. Well, it was and it wasn't. I thought the program was kind of garbage, to be honest with you. And it was only 3 semesters, number one. But by the time I realized that it was, and my mom was like, "Oh, do you want to transfer and go to UT?" I was like, "Well, I'm done in a semester.
Right.
I have to start over." Um, the way that it was valuable for me is it actually got me in the door in a way that I never would have expected, which is I actually always kind of had a an apt for science. I'm a little bit like a left brain right brain hybrid, right? I was good at science and math, really good at coding from an early age. I was taking in like middle school, high school, like Turbo, Pascal, C++, stuff like that, and like I said, very early age. And so anyway, I ended up taking some of these computer courses at BU with a great teacher, Melissa Horvath at the time, and I learned Flash and I learned how to build websites. And so I had something that other creatives did not have at that time.
Yeah, that's cool.
My first 2 websites were built completely by me in Flash, and that was at least my foot in the door for something like JWT. Actually, Linda Wicker at the time worked there, and she found me. I wasn't even seeking it; I was at another place, and so that was kind of like an interesting foot in the door. What ended up happening was I was there starting in like 2007. I want to say it was 2009. It was that whole economic breakdown.
Yeah.
People were getting laid off. I was able to find myself at iHeartMedia, but I was there for 3.5 years, and it was just stagnant.
Hmm.
It was the market wasn't picking up for some reason, probably because I had never had like good formal design training. I was being passed over, and I was just frustrated. I kept being told I was the best person in my department, but if anyone knows anything about iHeart, it's that they're pretty stingy on their salaries and they
Yeah.
don't give a lot of promotions. So,
Try working at a school.
right? Um, but so I got to the point where I was just kind of having one of those like crossroads moments. I didn't know if I was going to move out of town or whatever. And kind of started looking into both portfolio schools that are in Atlanta and asking all my friends, which one, and, like what's better. And decided to take that huge risk at the ripe old age of 31.
Yeah.
And one of the best decisions I ever made.
Let's talk about that number, because I was going to ask you, because you said you always reference your age. So did you think that was was that a thing? When I think back of you as a student, I never thought of, oh, Lauren was the older one. Like that never crossed my mind, but obviously it did to you. So did you feel that you were older than your peers? Did you think that was an advantage or a disadvantage? Did it make any difference in your mind? Because you bring it up.
Yeah. Well, I was good 10 years older, or almost 10 years older than everyone else, right? It made a difference in terms of I wasn't quite able to like bond with the class in the same way. They were like getting on drunk buses, and like they were
Right.
still very much being their early 20s, which is fine. I did think I liked the fact that I had a little bit, not a leg up, so to speak, but like I knew what I had been in the industry to
You
know.
knew, right. You knew what mattered. Right.
Yeah, and I knew what to expect.
Mhm.
And I even had like stories and anecdotes to like lean on and stuff like that. So I felt that was interesting. I for the most part, all of all of the staff at the circus was so supportive of me, and kept telling me I was so brave to quit my job and go back and try to reinvent myself. I didn't feel like I was brave. I half thought I was stupid, but there was one person in particularly that, for whatever reason, I won't mention names, did not seem to like me and was just kind of like, yeah, you're gonna have to like start at the bottom and be a junior. And I was um, like after I graduated, I was like, I still have 7 years under my belt. Are
Yeah.
you
Right.
kidding me?
Exactly. Right.
Like I
Exactly.
don't have to start as a junior. Like
Right. That wasn't me, was it?
no, it was not you. Don't worry. Don't worry. You always
Okay.
have my back. You always have my back.
Nice, nice, nice. That's awesome. So, so, but still, okay. So at that point, your notes that we talked about, what we're going to talk about today, I'm just so fascinated in taking this leap to go to a place like Thrasio. And I'm just want to, what was running through your mind when you, because let's look at the actual math. So you graduated from the circus in September 2014. You worked for 2 years at Point Smith, senior art director, about 2 years at Unleaded. So was this the same situation where you felt that it was like your head was hitting a ceiling, or the opportunity wasn't there, or was it a financial thing for you? Was it a leadership thing for you? Like what was going through your mind that was the impetus to make the move to basically a digital startup type of brand?
I got in, not really, you don't say the ground floor, I got in on the first floor. You know, I was I was creative number 5 or 6 in our department, and we're approaching 100. I was employee number 65 across 3 offices, and we're approaching 700 and not slowing
Phew.
down.
Wow.
So I've watched our processes change. I've done everything from like, here, scrappy, figure it out, to like, oh, we're going through all these steps, then oh, it's taking too long, so we circle back around. Like it's constantly evolving. But that's kind of the fun of it, is everyone's kind of a problem solver in a sense.
Well, I'll say this. I don't think that that's true. I think that you're uniquely suited for this environment. I think that you have the ability to pivot and the ability to think and the ability to see the bigger picture better than a lot of people. I think that rate of change is kind of unsettling for some people. So I tip my hat to you. And you have an industry about you. There's another Lauren, recent grad named Lauren Byers, and I referred to her as an industry because I think of her as like so capable of whatever's thrown at her. She's almost like a producer who's also an art director. And you're kind of the same way, but you're more like, I think of you as a business big picture thinker who can also execute and fucking code, which is crazy. So that's really cool. So I'm happy to see that you're found a place where you're able to stretch all those things. So what is it about you? What trait of yours, personal thing about yourself, do you think has been helpful or valuable for you so far?
Well, it's a few things. I think stubbornness is one of them. Um, you know, I was talking to a friend the other day, and we were talking about how like every job I've ever had, I've always had that self doubt when you start, where you're like, "Am I going to be able to hack it?" Especially in the beginning. Are they going to feel like they made a mistake hiring me? Oh, oh my God, like I'm not going to cut it. Um, I sort of had that, not really when I started this job, but I definitely don't now. I definitely, it's been such an interesting experience. I feel like when I talk, people listen. I'm very well respected, and not in like a all powerful kind of way. I feel like I've become like a mentor towards these younger juniors, and it's really rewarding. I feel like, I'm a mama bear, right? And that was kind of always my leadership style, or from what I learned from bad leaders, actually, was what not to do and
I
how
was
I
gonna
wanted to be.
I was gonna ask you if the 5 previous jobs have taught you about that. You answered the question before I asked it, but what does this have to do with stubbornness?
That I probably should have given up and gone to law school a long time ago.
Oh yeah, I don't think so at all. I think that you're not reactive. I think that you have there's a resilience to you, which is really I think important. There's a patience. I'd say stubborn and patient are kind of like cousins or something.
Hmm.
They're willing to kind of like, you know, keep your feet grounded or something. So that's how I'm reading
Well,
it.
I thank you. What I can tell you is I knew from a very early on time that like my strength was in strategy, concepting, and brainstorming. I had to work very hard to get my design to where it is.
That's
There
fair.
were there were people in our school. I remember, God, Claire, what's her name? Like she would scribble something down 20 minutes before the class, and like Sylvia would think it was rainbows, and I was like, "What?" And like there were people, and there still are people that can design circles around me, and I understand that. I worked very hard at crafting and making myself better and better, but it was never my dream to be a diehard designer. I knew like I wanted to be an art director. I wanted to be a creative director eventually. I wanted to do the big ideas. Like that was the part that was fun for me and the part that I thought I really excelled at. Um, and it wasn't that the design wasn't fun, but I didn't need that accolade. And in fact, as I've transitioned more into this ACD role where I'm not doing design hardly at all, and the people underneath me are, um, I just get tickled watching them excel and and watching them hit it out of the park and feeling like it was a joint team effort. And I was happy to kind of like guide them in the right direction.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome.
that's where I knew I wanted my career to go to begin with, but you can't get there without taking the steps.
Of course. All right. So speaking of your supervisory role, if you hired a young junior art director or something, like what's the best way for someone who's just started to endear themselves to you? Like what do you value from new hires or young creatives coming in?
A few things. There's definitely, I'm a very open and honest person. I'm very transparent. I like a lot of communication. I don't bullshit people. I tell them the way it is, but not in a bad way. Just meaning like, for instance, if there's uncertainty in a company like this where things are constantly changing, I'll let them know what I know. I'm not going to be secretive. Like, this is what I got. We'll figure it out as we go along. We'll figure it out together. Because I don't want people to ever feel like their whether it's their jobs are in jeopardy or just like that uncertainty that can be really especially during corona. My God, during corona, like people, I have poured myself into this job, and I know other people have too, because you can't be around your friends and family, and it's just like it's the one place where you feel like you're making an impact. Um the other thing, and I'll tell you this little anecdote. A while back, I guess it was last summer, there was a glitch on Amazon, believe it or not, and probably something to do with coding, where hundreds of thousands of listings, obviously only some for us, but across the world, went down. They were suppressed. When they're suppressed, it means they don't even come up on your search results, and you have to fight and you have to work with seller support to get them back up. We had we did some experimenting. We found a little fix, but then that whole day and rest of the week became like what was known. We called it the tsunami suppression, and it was all hands on deck. Stop everything you're doing. You just need to get these listings back up because we're losing, thousands, millions, whatever per day.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so immediately when this fire happened in the morning, I started like organizing stuff, and like I was making spreadsheets, color coding so we could like divide up the work, who was going to work on, these listings and get stuff back up. This poor girl, Logan, she's absolutely one of my favorites. It was her second day on the job. And she's like, put me in, coach. She's like, I don't know what I'm doing. She's still getting onboarded, all of these things. She's like, I don't know what I'm doing. And one of my other girls that I love so much, Catherine, was immediately like, I got it. She jumped on a call with her, showed her what to do, exactly how to push it live. And like, I mean, this is within seconds or minutes, of this whole thing happening. And it's like, they worked together. Then my whole team was firing on all cylinders. And I couldn't have been more proud.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was, just watching that, like that initiative, that self-starter, which by the way, I'm not going to lie, I didn't have when I was that age. I mean, they're in their, mid 20s or whatever. And I was that girl that would sit around and like wait to be told what to do.
Right.
And like, oh, I'm going to be quiet until someone asks me something. But not these kids. I'm just super impressed by them. And in a company or an industry like this, especially during COVID, especially during all these Zoom calls, like if you don't stand up, speak up, say something, like you will get lost in the shuffle,
Yeah, you have to stand up and you have to give a shit. And it sounds like they do, which is really cool. Really, really cool. That you're lucky to have that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So knowing what you know now, if you could go back to the day you graduated from the circus, what would you whisper in young Lauren's ear? What's a lesson you wish you had?
I knew you were going to ask this question, but I wasn't sure at what point in my career because it changes from like what would I have told myself.
Well, you kind of already answered. Like, I think you're kind of already answered what you would tell yourself when you graduated from Tulane. You would say, "Don't get the master's, just take the leap, go to ad school." But like, I'm asking you about like the things, because there's always, the answer does change. The answer changes from different points of history, and it changes based on where you are now. Even asking the question about your graduation date, what you say to me now may be different than when we re-record another conversation in 5 years. So, but right now, what would you have said to yourself?
It's interesting. I would have told myself to have more confidence in my abilities. I would have told, I was always just worried that I was kind of the like weakest link for a very long time. Kind of what you and I talked about earlier, when I was like, I got to the end of school and I was like, wait a second, I'm not in the bottom tier.
Yeah, we talked a little bit before we started recording about that. So yeah, that's kind of cool.
And it was really validating for me, because for me, going back to school was this kind of feeling of, can I hack it or not? And they will let me know if I can't, I knew if I couldn't hack it, it was going to be revealed or uncovered. And, I would be politely told, like, maybe you should consider something else.
Right.
And that's fine. So it was very validating to kind of make it in a school that's so, reputable and well respected. And then the other thing I would have told myself is what I kind of was just telling you, which is like, be more assertive, stand up, share your ideas. Don't wait for people to tell you what to do. Start figuring it out for yourself. And that's something that we really have to do in this company. There is no playbook. There is no blueprint. My first quarter this entire year, because my position is brand new and we're entering in international marketplaces, which didn't exist before. My first quarter, my boss was like, figure out how it's going to work.
Oh, wow.
I did research. I talked to different departments. I've talked to people that have worked in the industry for years and years and years, and have done things internationally and gotten advice and put together decks and decision trees and like, who's going to do what. It's that whole, like, who owns what aspect of the project and signs off where. And like, it's a very different aspect of my job than I've ever done before. But there's also something kind of cool and empowering about getting to invent it yourself.
Yeah, I was going to say motivating. You said empowering. That's exactly what I was going to say. That's so cool. That's amazing. Yeah, it's interesting. You said that you would say that you're better than you think. I think also when you leave, the problem with school and my challenge as a program director at school is helping people realize that the currency, the thing that's valuable in school isn't always the thing you're going to be valued for. In other words, you probably had some self-doubt because you're comparing yourself as a straight up art director on the design side and not realizing that the intellect and the big picture thinking and the business acumen that you have is super valuable. You didn't know that then, right? You didn't realize that like the things that I have that aren't in that rectangle in typography are the things that are going to somehow kind of catapult me. And I'm not taking away from your design skills. I'm just saying that the other part of it isn't something that you're necessarily focused on as a student. So that comes with maturity.
Yeah. And I think I kind of always knew that. And that was one of the ways I kind of marketed myself coming out of school, which was like, I think if you remember back to my portfolio, I was like, I'm a little pot of Louisiana gumbo, which means I have a little bit of everything because I did. I had marketing, I had coding, I had animation, I had, design,
directing photo shoots, video editing, and everything in between.
Yeah. No, I mean, I had done photography while I was at Circus as well as in college. I don't know if you remember this, but like I used to do creative writing a ton when I was a kid, and like so I kind of had like a little bit of everything, which for a while I worried did that actually hurt me because I wasn't like amazing at something. But as the world changes, you don't want to pigeon yourself in one place and only be just an amazing designer because you'll find a ceiling there. And being able to pivot and do different things and just be more versatile, I think is the way to go, but that's just my opinion.
No, I think that's 100% correct. I think that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for talking. It's just so great and it makes me feel so good to see you like in your element and happy, even if you're not home, you're visiting your family in California. Thank you so much for taking time from laughing. The first time we talked, you said all we do is sit around and laugh at this job. So thank you for getting away from it. Hopefully you're laughing now. That's nice to see. Listeners, you can reach Lauren at lauren.goldsmith@gmail.com. That's the free Google Mail service, lauren.goldsmith@gmail.com. You can reach me as always at danspodcast@mac.com. Podcast is available on Spotify. If you're listening to this on the web, you can listen to it on Spotify on your device. Thanks again. Just a great conversation. I really hope the listeners got some focus and kind of cracking open not only the world, but themselves, which is, I think, sort of my hope that we'd be able to talk about this in that context. So thank you so much for doing it with me.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it.
Listeners, we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Till then, bye.
Bye.